What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Dog Talk with your host, Holden. Glad to have everybody here this evening. Glad to have you guys. Well, really, I guess whatever time you guys are listening to this, you could listen to it at any point in time. You could be watching this at any point in time. Doesn't necessarily have to be evening. That's the fun thing about this show. But regardless, glad to have everybody here and looking forward to getting another episode out to you guys. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you can see some things are kind of changing, moving stuff around. So just bear with me as I try to figure out the best setting for this. But glad to have you guys here yet again as we prepare for another episode. Georgia heading, well, I guess back home, not really heading anywhere as we get set to take on Kent State this Saturday, 12 o'clock, another home game for Georgia, another 12 o'clock kick. We're looking for one of those nighttime kicks. I got a feeling it's coming. I feel like, unfortunately, it's probably going to be against an inferior opponent. And I hate to say this, and it seemed this way, but I'm just going to be honest about it. I'm afraid more than likely that's going to end up being against the likes of an Auburn or a Vanderbilt. I really hope that the Tennessee game is a night game at home. I think that's a very, very good advantage for Georgia to have, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. And that leads us right into the start of the show, and that's talking about some of the news and notes. The 2023 schedule did come out. Obviously, we talked last week about the cancellation of the Oklahoma game that's supposed to be happening next year. That's obviously no longer happening, so that's unfortunate. But, you know, these other games that come in, all I've heard is complaining about the home schedule next year. The teams that we're playing, the best teams you're playing is Oklahoma, or not Oklahoma, is Ole Miss, and seems like there was one other, Kentucky, you get at home. So that more than likely right now it's going to be the best two home games that there are, with exception to, you know, again, a Ball State, some of these opponents that just, to be quite frank, if Georgia's playing this year, we're going to call them cupcakes because that's what they would be called. That's not me trying to bash another team. That's just me being honest up front right here about it. A lot of complaining about that 2023 home schedule. And again, I get it to an extent, but at the same time, there's not really much that we can do about it. So there's really, the complaining doesn't really help anybody in the end. So, but regardless, 2023 schedule is out. You guys check it out. I really do hope that, again, this Tennessee game this season is what turns into a night game, because I think, again, that's just a very good opportunity for Georgia to not only host recruits but also host Tennessee and just show a really good showing for a night game this year. You know, last year we got South Carolina, and I think that was really the only true night game that Georgia had. And I mean, that was South Carolina. You saw what happened last week against South Carolina. It was similar to that last year. So would hope that this would be the opportunity to be able to do that against Tennessee, with Tennessee coming to the house. And again, I think that does give you a leg up a little bit in a big game like that. So we're going to keep our eyes peeled out for that. Into some more news. William Poole, we have to talk about that a little bit. We saw on social media that he has departed from the team for personal issues, as Kirby Smart did comment on that at the end of maybe the South Carolina game, if it wasn't in his press conference at the start of this week. So unfortunate, but all you can do, you know, we don't know what's going on, and we're not going to ask. We're not going to try to get into the middle of the guy's business. It's his business. It's his personal thing to deal with. All we can do is wish him the best, because he has been a DGD the entire time that he has been here. And he was a big help last year in the national championship season and in that game as well, helping to push the Dogs to a national championship for the first time in 41 years. So prayers out to him, whatever it is that he's dealing with, but we wish him nothing but the best. On to some of the injury update for this game coming up against Kent State. Kirby Smart does say that he is hopeful we will get A.D. Mitchell back. I think everybody knows what that means, though. More than likely, we're not going to see him back, and again, I think this is just another opportunity to rest him. I do think eventually you do have to start taking steps forward and getting him in games to start getting him rep back up and up to speed with the offense again before we get into some of this deeper competition once we start getting into the SEC. Throughout the rest of this, what I'm going to call before the break, before we have that bye week, before we go to Florida, you have a pretty good schedule. You got Missouri coming up, you got Vanderbilt, you got Auburn, all three of which right now look like teams that should be easily taken care of by Georgia, and I don't doubt that they'll do that. So we have time for these guys who are a little beat up. Even Jalen Carter, he didn't get to play much last week. He's battling a little bit here. Guys battling hamstrings and things of that nature. So that is something to kind of keep an eye on as we move forward. Hopefully, allowing these guys to get healthy, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that when the time comes for these bigger games, that these guys are also up to speed and that we're not all of a sudden putting them in a game that means a lot and these guys are gassed, for lack of a better word. So that's some of the news and notes, I guess you'd say, as we kind of get prepared for this episode coming up on the Kent State preview as we start to get ready for this game coming in. So let's go ahead and jump down to the breakdown of this game. Coming into it here, again, Kent State right now 1-3. They've already played a couple of bigger opponents. They went to Washington to start the year, lost that one 45-20. Also traveled over to Oklahoma and lost that one as well, 33-3. Before last week, getting a huge 63-10 victory over a non-opponent, even for them, coming out of the MAC conference, beating, I think, if I saw it LIU, at first I was like Liberty, but that's not who it is. I think it's Long Island. What better team, I guess, to have a name there as Long Island? I always think of the drink, so it's perfect when it comes to college football, right? Anyways, jumping into it, I don't have a lot to break down on these guys. I've looked at Georgia's offense and defense. Offensively right now we're doing fairly good. We got 43.3 points a game as of right now. That's good enough to be 17th in the country. And then opponents scoring against us is 3.3. That's first in the country. We all know that coming into it. Georgia has scored 130 points and given up 10 points throughout the season. No other team in the country has given up less than Georgia has throughout the season so far. And again, averaging right at 3.3 points a game just because of that late touchdown score by South Carolina last week, unfortunately. But that is what it is. Georgia looks to rebound off of a big victory last week and just continue and keep that momentum going. I would love to see the offense just continue to churn out plays and just to play recklessly like we have the past couple of weeks is just roll. Even like I said last episode, watching Georgia in the fourth quarter still throw the ball up 45-0, that was awesome to me. I love to see it, and I hope we get to continue seeing that as time moves forward. So far right now, Stetson Bennett, almost 1,000 yards on the season, 5 touchdowns. Carson Beck even behind him, right at 200 yards with 2 touchdowns on the season. Rushing the ball right now, Kendall Milton does lead that charge, 167 yards with a touchdown. He is averaging 6 yards a carry, though, and that is something to pay attention to there. 65 yards through the air. Kenny Mack only 53 yards on the ground, but he's got 192 through the air. That's good enough to be second on team in the wide receiver category. Brock Bowers now leading that at 216. Right behind him is Lab McConkey at 62. And the defensive star so far and the stud so far this season is Malachi Starks. You saw the big interception he had against Oregon, and he is keeping it going, having another interception there against South Carolina this week. 2 so far on the season. Also 11 tackles, which is good enough to be tied with Smile Munden Jr. at the top as far as tackles go throughout the season. Dan Jackson right up there too. He was another, I believe, walk-on a couple of years ago. Comes in, he's sitting third right now on that list, and also a very good starting player for us. Would love to see some of these other guys kind of get their name pulled back up in this a little bit. Again, I kind of felt like Darnell Washington. I want to see him some more. And outside of just a pass blocking or rush blocking kind of a scheme there, I'd love to see more out of him, as well as blanking completely right now. Kearis Jackson. I'd love to see the veteran wide receiver get more touches, and hopefully coming into this game here, we're going to see that. It's my hope anyways. We'll see. We'll see if that happens again. It's not up to me. Todd Monken, he told you off the start of the season, he gets paid to score, not to win. So far, his scoring has won, so it's a helping hand. Let's get to the keys of the game. Offensively, simple. A lot of these are going to be very similar to the Samford keys, just because, again, this is an opponent that Georgia should be able to take care of handily and quickly, to be honest with you. It seemed a little bit slower in that game. This should be beautiful weather. Should not be wet at all. Temperatures will drop off. It could, granted it's a lunchtime kick, so it's not like it's going to be the coolest game there is out there, but it has a very good opportunity to be great weather, good fall weather out there. So that shouldn't be a factor. Georgia should be able to let the ball rip, run the ball fairly effectively, but offensively, let's get to the keys of the game. The first one, handle your business. Get out there. Let's handle our business. Do what you're here to do. Win the football game. Let's throw it, run it, whatever it takes. Handle your business. Get out there and do it. And depth experience. That is getting. Once we get Stetson in there, I don't know if we're going for a specific thing. I don't know if we want to see him on the field for multiple quarters. If we want to just see enough of him to get a good head start, and then let's say, hey, let's get these other guys reps. If they're looking and saying, hey, he's got the Pat Mahomes record right now. He's got a good stat with him, not record, I should say. Do we want to keep that up? I don't know. More than likely, I don't think this is a stat padding kind of a game or situation as much as it's, hey, get in here. Let's, again, off the top, handle our business, and then we will get the experience below you, that depth, get that experience built up for these guys below you. Because so far, Carson Beck has looked elite, and it looks very good on the outlook of what next season can look like with him at the top of that depth chart. So handle your business, get that experience finally, and it's going to be the same on defense. Let's get through this game injury-free. We come in against Samford. We don't do that. A.D. Mitchell hurt at the very beginning of the game, and he hasn't been back for 2 weeks. More than likely, like I said, I don't think he's going to end up back in this game. So that's something else to kind of keep an eye on as well. We got to get out of this injury-free. We've got bigger games coming up down the season that we need to keep these guys as healthy as we can. Jumping down to the defense, lockdown, just like you have been all day, every day. And the last two are going to be the same, that depth experience. Let's get it and be injury-free. But defense, let's lock it down. Once we get that depth experience in the game and we start getting these younger guys, that reps and everything that we talk about week in and week out, getting these guys the experience that they need to continue to move forward. But it's also these first-string guys, they're going to hold them accountable. Hey, don't let them move the ball. If they're moving the ball, you better not let them score. And that's something I want to see in this game. I think this has a good opportunity to be a shutout. Don't know if that happens. We'll get to the picks coming up here in just a minute. But I think the defense is going to do everything they can in their power to make sure that this team doesn't, especially that first team, especially that second team, getting down to the third and even some of the fourth-string guys, if that's even considered a thing, which it should be because we're at home, you get the full roster benefits there. They're going to do everything they can to keep these guys out of the end zone. So that's it. I mean, it's very, very simple. Offensively, handle your business, get that experience in there, come out injury-free. Same thing essentially on defense. Lock it down. Let's get some of that experience in there with the depth and come out of this injury-free so we can move forward and get past this game. Georgia is a 45-point favorite, and like I told you guys, I would tell you how the picks are going to look coming into this. I got it picked right now 52-3. I think that was what I put up on Instagram and Twitter there. So make sure, I don't know if you guys, you might care or not care about the picks or the prediction. That's prediction more than it is a pick on the week, because we're going to get to the picks here in just a minute. But I got it picked 52-3. I kind of kept going back and forth. Is this the game that they don't score? I will say the fact that they scored 63-10, again, that's an inferior opponent, a Long Island team that they should put that kind of points on, but they're coming out of the MAC. They're still a team that's not necessarily a world beater. Again, they scored 20 points on Washington. Washington just won a big game last weekend, and Oklahoma was 33-3. It's not like Oklahoma put a lot on them. But at the same time, when we played Samford, we didn't put a lot on Samford either. We only put 33 on them. Now, we kept them scoreless, so that can be a similar kind of comparison there. If it is, I don't know. But when you go then the next game you play is 63 points you put on the board, it's going to be difficult to slow that offense down. Let me take that back. Let me just take it back. It's Georgia's defense. We're going to slow the offense down. More than likely, we're going to bring it to a screeching halt. But when you look at that, that does kind of jump out on the page. Okay, they scored 63 points last year. They're kind of firing on all cylinders. I don't think this is something that happens early. It may happen that way, and I could be shocked. But I think it's going to be later in the game. Even though this defense is going to want to keep these guys out of the end zone, I think they do that. But I think late into the game, they at least get close enough to kick a pretty long field goal to end up putting it on the board, and they're happy to get a field goal on the board against this defense that's given up 3.3 points a game and has only given up 10 points on the season. So 52-3. I kept going back and forth. Do I think Georgia ends up 56-3? I don't know. Again, this is a lunchtime kick. It's a good opportunity to kind of be sleepy into this. I guess you could add that as another key to the game, just like against Samford. Don't sleepwalk into this game. I don't think that's going to be the case in this one. It doesn't feel like the same situation. You've heard Kirby all week long say, hey, these guys just cannot buy into what the media is saying, that they're so good that they can't be beat by Kent State, because Kent State can come in here and smack you in the mouth. I think any team can do that week in and week out, but I do know that the standard right now is Georgia's defense doesn't allow teams to score. As long as they keep that standard up, as long as they keep believing that, Georgia's going to be A-OK. So let's get to some of our picks around the week. Now, as we start looking into some of these others, and this is what I have on it. Georgia, Kent State, give me Georgia minus 45. I do think, again, with that 52-3 pick there, just above that 45 line, and I do think that's what's going to end up happening. So give me Georgia and minus 45. Then we go to Arkansas and Texas A&M. A big game this weekend. A&M is actually a 2-point favorite coming into this one. I don't know. A&M's offense has not looked all that great. Arkansas spit and sputtered a little bit last week against Missouri State. I think this is a comeback game for Arkansas. Even though they beat Texas A&M last year, I think it's a comeback game off of that rough game against Missouri State last week, where, again, Texas A&M's offense is not impressive to me. Their defense, it looks pretty good, but I think in the end, Arkansas ends up winning this game, and I also think they cover that 2-point spread. So give me Arkansas and the +2 there. Then we jump down to another big game in the SEC this weekend. That's Florida at Tennessee. Big matchup. Tennessee has not been able to take care of Florida in the years past, but I do think this is the opportunity for Tennessee to do that. And I did not, as you can see if you're looking on YouTube at the video, I did not put this Tennessee tea in orange because I ain't going to do it. And you see below it, I got the Clemson. Paul, that's different. Completely different. These oranges are not the same. So you got a white Tennessee tea there. If you're listening on podcast, go check it out. You'll see what I'm talking about. But I do think Tennessee takes care of Florida. I do not think Florida's a good team. You have heard all the conversation about AR-15 over the last couple of weeks. Oh, he's a Heisman favorite, and you see how terrible he has been. Still not having thrown a touchdown pass this season, but does very, very good at tackling guys when he does throw interceptions, which he has more interceptions at this point than I think Carson Beck has touchdowns. But regardless, Florida at Tennessee, I think Tennessee takes care of Florida pretty handily. Minus 10.5, I'll take both of those. So give me Tennessee with the win and minus 10.5 in this one. Then we go to Clemson at Wake Forest. Wake Forest has a good opportunity at home here to kind of stun Clemson. Clemson's offense has spit and sputtered from time to time. I think DJ Uiagalelei kind of gets things rolling this week, and give me Clemson minus that 7-point line. I do think that Clemson has the opportunity to come into this one and take care of business as far as that side of the ball goes, and finally maybe get some offense up and rolling in this one. We'll kind of get to some of the Twitter conversation. I forgot to do the dog of the week last week, and that dog of the week was Malachi Starks. So I do think he just continues to be just wreaking havoc for the defense back there. Not even getting to the quarterback. This is something we talked about last week. I don't know that Georgia has recorded a sack on the season. I don't know that Georgia has a single sack on the entire season, but we are affecting the quarterback. We're in his face. We're making him throw bad throws or throwing it away, interceptions, which we've been able to do all season long. So I hope that continues for Georgia. And I think that it will defensively. Offensively, obviously, we have started to get things rolling, and I think we continue to get things rolling. Real quickly here, we're going to jump over to Twitter and look at some of the polls that we put up, some of the other conversation that we've had as well. And first and foremost off of that, I do want to shout out to Chris, which is, if you guys don't know, the British Bulldog. He is in Georgia. Came over, what do we call it, the big pond. Comes across the pond and coming to check out Athens and watch Georgia play against Kent State this weekend. I'm very excited for him to have that opportunity to come and do that. And he is in Georgia this weekend, checking it out Friday for a concert. If you guys don't know this, because it sounds kind of weird if you have no clue what I'm talking about, go check out My God, a Podcast, where they did a little interview with him coming over this way. So very excited for him, and hope he enjoys that opportunity to come and watch the Dogs play there. If you check it out on Twitter at DogTalk20, you can see it there at the top of the page. Watching on YouTube for you guys on podcast, you can click the link in the description. You will be able to see where William Poole put that up on his Instagram, which we tweeted as well as on Instagram there. Now let's get to the Twitter polls of the week. Starting things off, who has more touchdown passes versus Kent State, Stetson Bennett or Carson Beck? And I think this all came down to who is going to be in the game longer. Is Stetson Bennett in it for 2 or 3 touchdowns, and then Carson Beck comes in and has the opportunity to throw two or three? Excuse me, my goodness, all of a sudden can't talk. Does he then have the opportunity to throw more than Stetson. I don't know, but the voting came out this way. 87% of you guys went with Stetson, 13% Carson Beck way, which I understand. More likely that's what's going to happen. Let's see. Yeah, I didn't realize that I spelled Beck with an S on the end. Do we rush for 250 yards or more versus Kent State? 60% of you guys going with yes, we've rushed for 250 or more in this game. I hope so. I would love to see the offense get up and rolling, or not the offense, but the run game, because last week we started to get it kind of moving, and I hope we just kind of continue that this week. I hope we start to run downfield. But offensively, we have seen that Georgia continues week in and week out. Now we're moving more to the air, which I like. I like to see that. I still want to see us put the ball on the ground too and run it a little harder and a little heavier as well. So we'll see. 60% of you guys going with yes, and I hope that happens. I would love to see like a 600-yard. I know that's a lot to ask, but like a 600-yard offensive day for Georgia in this to really rear its head. And I think if that happens, Georgia does put up that 60-burger, which is another question that I asked you guys. That may have been as early as today. Does Georgia drop 60 points on Saturday? 55% of you guys go with yes and 45% with no. Again, I understand it. I was on the fence of it. I was like 56-0. I even said 59-0, and I kept telling myself, is Georgia really going to get that close to 60? Could that happen? Maybe. But will they? I just don't know. I don't know if Georgia really is going to want to shellac them that hard. I really don't know. But we'll see. We'll see. So, but again, I would love to see that 600-yard kind of offensive turnout. That's a big game, rushing for 250 plus, and again throwing for over 350 in this game. Doable. We've seen what what Stetson has done, and we've seen what Carson's done coming in behind him as well. So let's get to the other. Who's going to be the top receiver in this one? Some of this is kind of in step. You know, you look and you see who the guys have been and what last week looked like with Brock Bowers, and most everybody's going to go with that, and most of you guys do. I put Brock Bowers, Lab McConkey, Darnell Washington, and somebody else. 37% of you guys go with Brock, 32% with Ladd, 21% at Darnell, and 10% of you guys with someone else. I wish for you 10% that decided to vote that way would have said, hey, tell me who. If it's A.D. Mitchell, we'll see if he even is in this game. If it's Kearis Jackson, should have asked you guys to kind of elaborate on some of that. Again, in the 2023 season, that schedule is up. You guys can go and check it out as well. I did also ask what was it like being a dog in the early 80s. Did want to kind of get some of y'all. Obviously, if you see, maybe, I don't know, maybe I look older than I am. I was not alive in the 80s, so I do not know, other than just knowing the history of Georgia, how good the 80 season was, obviously. 80 or 79, 80, 81, 82, through those few years there where Georgia was elite, Georgia was on the top. And I think that we may be reliving that time right now. There's a fun quote from The Office. I wish, I'll butcher it here, but I wish we knew we were in the good old days when we were actually in the good old days. And I think this is a moment to wake up and realize, hey, we're in the good old days. Georgia's mighty good. They won the national championship last year. They have a good chance to do it this year. The schedule looks like they could try it again next year. So just something for it. But anyways, what was it like being a dog in the 80s? A couple of you guys did come back at it. It was awesome, just like it is to be a dog today. Exactly what I was thinking there at UGA Girls 60. Incredible. Seemed like we'd never lose, but those 3 years ruined it for us for years. That's Stuart Wells there on Twitter as well. And then a couple of the other ones. Dr. Hobnail Booties. Those were my days, 1980 to 84 in Athens were insane. Great football teams, and we could all sneak liquor into the games. I responded to that one. Hope we're reliving those glory days right now with a little sneaky drink too. Those are indeed the glory days. I think the teams now have deeper talent than the teams back then. Herschel really did kind of carry us. That is very true. Glory, glory, love my Bulldogs. There you go. Go Dogs, Dr. Hobnail Booties. I agree 100%. Like I said, I would have loved to have seen it back there. A lot of that is to see that guy carry the rock right there, Herschel Walker. To have seen that in person, I think that would have been a lot of fun. And I think we're getting to see a little bit of that this year as well when we get to see some of these guys move the ball. The way that Stetson's playing, the way that Brock Bowers is continuing what he did last year. Ladd kind of coming out and showing out. These defensive guys stepping up in opportunities. You get the opportunity to get on the field, make the best of it. And I think these guys are doing a very good job at that, and I'm excited to see what they do moving forward. Let me make sure I didn't have anything else on here before we move on. But in the dead space here, I'll try to remember to do the dog of the week coming up after this game against Kent State. Some of the other bigger games that are around the country that I did want to kind of run through real quick. Before we jumped off of here, you can see a few of them scrolling on the bottom of the screen if you guys are watching on YouTube. Again, on podcast, if you guys are not watching, that's cool. Make sure you guys go and check it out. And if you do, please like the video as well as subscribe to the YouTube channel there. I would greatly appreciate that. You do have Maryland and Michigan playing at Fox at 12 o'clock, same time Georgia is playing. Georgia is also playing on the SEC Network Plus, ESPN Plus. I've seen a lot of this conversation of trying to figure out how in the world do we watch it. Last I checked, if you have like Dish or DirecTV or something like that that carries the SEC network, you still can stream that game. I don't think you can stream it necessarily from the TV, but you can at least go on the ESPN app and watch it on your phone, tablet, or on your TV, I guess, if you have the ESPN app, because that SEC network, that is supposed to be part of that. I think when it says ESPN Plus only, that's where you get into that situation where you have to have that subscription. But I know there's a bunch of other people trying to put that information out there for you guys who still aren't quite sure how you're going to be able to watch the game. So I would encourage you guys to check that out. That way you know how to watch the game if you're really looking to watch it. Clemson, Wake Forest, like we talked there. Clemson 7-point favorite. That's number 5 and 21. Baylor at Iowa State. This is an interesting one. I should have looked at this one. This is also 12 o'clock on ESPN2. Iowa State is actually a 2.5-point favorite. Even though they're not ranked, they are 3-0, hosting number 17 Baylor as they come in at 2-1. Florida, Tennessee, which we talked about. Texas Tech. That's 2-1 teams playing at 3:30 on ESPN. Texas is a 7-point favorite on the road at Texas Tech. Oregon and Washington State. I think this is a good one. Again, we want Oregon to be successful through the rest of the season. Obviously, since we shellacked them at the beginning of the season, we'd like to see them continue to do that, which they did last week against a 12th-ranked BYU. That is why they are now ranked 15th in the country, starting to work their way back up. That makes, again, all it does is make Georgia's strength of schedule a little better. It's hard to do when you have some of these other games, but it makes it a little better, and it makes Georgia look better considering what we did to Oregon. As long as they continue to be successful moving forward. That one at 4 o'clock on Fox. Again, Washington State is 3-0, Oregon 2-1. The only loss to, obviously, the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs. Oregon is a 6.5-point favorite coming into this one. Tulsa traveling to Ole Miss. Arkansas, Texas A&M. Again, that one at 2 o'clock. That one's at Jerry World, I believe. That's usually where it is. And as long as my phone will quit jumping to everything else, we'll be okay. But it wants to keep jumping to it. The big game at 7:30. Again, this is liable to happen to Georgia. Vanderbilt traveling to number 2 Alabama, 7:30 p.m. SEC Network. Vanderbilt 3-1 though. Never know. Wisconsin 2-1 traveling to number 3 Ohio State. Kansas State, Oklahoma. Don't rule it out. Don't rule it out. Oklahoma 12.5-point favorite in that one. You do have number 7 USC traveling to Oregon State. Both teams 3-0 on the Pac-12 network. That one at 9:30. You get Pac-12 at night. Oklahoma is 12.5-point favorite. Oregon State, sorry, got it all backwards here. USC is a 6-point favorite in that one. Wyoming, a 3-1 team traveling to 19. BYU now 2-1 after losing to Oregon. Even though they're 3-1, BYU is still a huge 3-score difference in this one, 21.5. Utah, Arizona State, shouldn't be much there. Stanford, Washington. Normally that would probably be a big game. Washington is 3-0 at 18, but Stanford only 1-1 on the season. And that's really the biggest games around the country. I did want to look and just double check to make sure that the SEC, because sometimes we got the bottom, what I'm going to call the bottom of the barrel bowl. That's Missouri versus Auburn. I think Auburn is going to finish at dead bottom of the SEC West this year, and I think Missouri is going to fall dead bottom of the SEC East. You heard me right. I think Vandy gets a win in the SEC East this year, and it's against Missouri, putting Missouri at the bottom, Vandy one notch above them. So, yeah, the battle of the bottom of the SEC right here. Missouri at Auburn. Auburn's 7-point favorite. ESPN, both teams 2-1. That's happening at lunchtime. You don't care that much. I get it. I mean, that's really the biggest ones. everything else, SEC should be able to take care of. So we're going to go ahead and kind of get ready to wrap things up here as long as I can remember all of my info here. So again, I appreciate you guys listening. If you guys don't mind, make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at DawgTalk20. I'd appreciate that. Same thing on Instagram. If you guys are watching on YouTube, make sure, like I said earlier, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate that. If you guys want to support the show, the link is in the description. And I mean, again, links to everything that you need is in the description of the podcast and on YouTube. If you guys are watching, just click that link. It'll take you wherever you need to go. Look forward to checking in with you guys after we take care of business this weekend against Kent State. Go Dogs.